The lesson that's come from this imposter syndrome thing was when I was younger, pre-18 and around about that 18 mark, I used to sometimes be paralyzed with the fear of someone catching me. And I think in the later stage of my development, I learned to convert that to fuel. And I would say if I could convert that to fuel earlier in my life, I could have avoided, a lot of the stress, a lot of the drama, a lot of the anxiety. I would love to have known that when I was younger.
All right, today's guest is a world leader in the food and nutrition industry. He's the founder and CEO of the food innovation lab, Chew, and the sports fueling company called FastFood. He's an accomplished Ironman triathlete and a world-renowned progressive chef. He understands the frustrations of inadequate fueling products and has assembled his own expert team to develop FastFood, which is a high-performance fuel made from 100% real food. With Chew, his other company, he's partnered with global food and beverage manufacturers to create over 4,000 products. This is a fascinating story, and I'm looking forward to diving in more. It's an honor and privilege to welcome a man with just such a remarkable journey to the One Moment Longer podcast. Adam Melonas, how are you, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Hearing a remarkable background from somebody like you is no doubt humbling, and I think very flattering.
No, well, it was. We got introduced not long ago, and we spoke for a little bit, and I was like, oh, what a story, what a journey. And I was like, I got to get him on the show. So I appreciate you taking time out of your very busy schedule of running multiple companies, family, training for an Ironman, and you still find some time for me. So I appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, of course, mate. These sorts of things are the most fun I get to do in my day.
We were just talking pre-show about, organizations and people management and everything else. And, I asked you, how's the start of your day been, being that it's 1:00 here on a Thursday, and you went into full steam ahead of just managing people, managing an organization, being an entrepreneur, and everything that goes with it. Tell us about your day today already.
Yeah, mate. I mean, it's startups are like the Wild West, right? It's I think I mentioned to you that if there's not like 15 dramas before midday, then it's a good day. And another one of my favorite analogies in this space is the using the line from Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke's Training Day that lives in my mind all the time, which is it's about managing the smiles and cries. It's you'll never get a day where there's no cries, but the best you can do is hope that most days there's more smiles than cries. And frankly, that's the addictive nature of trying to do something that, in its current rendition hasn't been done before. And that's the joy, right? It's our ability to, blaze trails and somewhere try to conquer.
Were you up early this morning training? How are you fitting it all in?
Right. I think we're somewhere cut from the same cloth. I'm up at 4:00 every day, as I know you are. I'm doing Ironman Texas next week, actually. So we're in this like semi-taper week this week, and then we'll do a full-blown taper next week. But I did just somewhat of an easy hour on the bike at 250 watts, and then a race pace run off the bike, but much easier compared to normal. But training before the kids get up.
Yeah, I'm impressed with you, buddy. I know that you train about 20 to 25 hours a week. You have these two companies. You're a father of how many kids?
Father of 3 little kids, all so 9, 7, and 3 years old.
Honestly, I could spend most of this episode just talking about how you manage the time management of all of that. Like, to your point, you get up at 4, you get your training going. Even though you're in tapering, it's still a solid couple of hours of training in the morning. Mate, time management, your missus must be incredible.
Yeah, a lot of people ask the question if. So first of all, she's an Aussie, so she's as you know from Aussie wives, the no bullshit approach. But look, I'll tell you the truth, right? I say that busy is a state of mind. That I think most people, if they really take a good hard look at what they can potentially do in the course of a day, they underestimate how much they can get done. And I think, frankly, one of the things, and I shouldn't say this because it's going to make me sound like a bad guy, but I love when people, different team members that we have on board, when they'll come to me and say, well, I just don't have the time, or I can't find the time, or I've got no, this notion of work-life balance, and I'll I shouldn't probably arc up, but I'll always say like, how many kids have you got? Zero. Okay. How many companies have you got? Zero. And then you're like, well, what are you doing with the rest of your day? Like you've got, half of a lifetime before your work day starts, and another half of a lifetime, at the end of the day. And, it's just about trying to maximize each and every one of those potential opportunities to create impact for your own life or somebody else.
Oh, yeah, it's so true, isn't it? I mean, do you go through phases though sometimes where you're really on it, and you clockwork 4 a.m.s, you're kicking along, even work is great, your relationships are great. Do you ever find that you sort of go, life's a bit challenging, life's a bit tough? And I guess in those times, how do you get yourself back out of them and get back on track?
I would call those times, I would say maybe between the hours of like 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I'll tell you the truth, Greg. I recall the time that I had a time getting out of bed. I can't recall the time where I've, not wanted to leave the house to come into the company. I think if any of those two things are happening, I think it begs the question that you frankly should be questioning why or what you're doing. That's the same for a lot of people training. Sadly, a lot of people train to race, and I'm just new in this, right? So I've come into this with what I like to call baby eyes, but you talk to a lot of people and they're just like slogging the training out to somehow get to this mythical race. And all of a sudden, this less than 1% of your time, which is spent racing versus the 99% in training, is somehow worth the 99%. And that's where, people are doing the wrong thing in their training. And if that's, I genuinely look forward to the training. I find that frankly the best part. And exactly the same with, what's something for a career. If you're going to spend that much time doing that thing, I'm surrounded by those people. You'd want to make sure those people become an extension of your family, and the thing becomes you see the world and how you get to impact it. So doing every second or every minute. But at the same time, I do it all. I try to do it all purposefully. And if I'm with my kids, I'm dedicated to being with my kids. And in that moment, if I'm working, then I'm dedicated to that. And if I'm training, I'm in that 100%.
Well said. I love that, mate. It's being present with what you have in front of you and embracing what you have. I really love that. Where are you at the moment? Where are you calling me from? With that strong Aussie accent, where are you?
Mate, I'm holding on to the Aussie accent for dear life. I've been living in Boston now for the last, I think it's going on about 12, 13 years. But yeah, desperately trying to hold on to that Aussie accent. You
haven't lost it at all, mate. And I'll have to catch up with you when I'm up in Boston next, because, that's where our company is. Any Questions based up there. And I know that's where you have FastFood and Chew are based out there. So we'll have to make sure we catch up next time I'm up there. But mate, let's do this. I'm fascinated by your journey, because from what I believe Canberra via Europe and the Middle East to finally be in Boston. Tell us let's recap this journey of yours. And it seems to me there's a lot around the food industry and nutrition. When did all of that passion start for you?
Yeah. So I always say there's two different ways to answer that, right? There's the stereotypical way that I think most chefs like to answer that question, which is, I sat in my grandmother's kitchen, licking the spoon, and all of a sudden I developed my love and passion for food. I always say, if that was the case, then we would all be chefs. It doesn't necessarily catalyze itself into a career. Mine was probably less than romantic. When my mother was alive, she used to hate me telling this story. And in fact, I can tell you, she learned of this story for the very first time when I was in one of the newspapers. And she told all of her friends that, you've got to go out and you've got to get this newspaper because, Adam's in it with his story. And she didn't realize the punchline of the story was how I got into the kitchen. So basically it was out of necessity. My parents always had their own business from home. And, food was always very kind of functional, and not necessarily just functional. It was just really filling a gap. Right. It was always an afterthought. They were always so busy. Frankly, I'll be honest with you. I thought food was something to be feared until I started trying to figure it out myself. And I'll tell you, Greg, obviously, as you're an Aussie as well, something shameful was I was watching TV one day and I saw these people eating steak on the TV. And frankly, they were making sounds. It actually looked delicious, right? It looked like they were enjoying it. And I was like, something's wrong here. because the steak that we get, it was like, frankly, I would tell you that shoe leather was probably more tender. And it was like, I don't really get it. So I said to my mother at the time, I said, can we, I started reading these, like back in the day, the Woman's Weekly cookbooks.
Yeah.
And I said, let me have a go at this. And I think I was about 9 years old.
Wow.
And same age as my oldest son, which I could never imagine him in the kitchen cooking dinner for the family yet. But, in the beginning, I always say that, it probably started out by being bad, mostly bad, and then, started getting maybe a little more edible. And then starting to try to, paint outside the lines and not just follow the recipe, started to, changing some things up, which then led me to leave school very early at like 15 years old, and then became an apprentice chef in the Hyatt Hotel within Canberra, then qualified as an apprentice when I was 17. At about 18 years old, going on 19, I left Australia for London. Ended up at 19 years old becoming chef partner of a fine dining restaurant in Notting Hill. Let's just say I stretched some of the truths of my age and my experience to get the role, worked my way into the role, baptism by fire, got headhunted to go to Dubai, took over a restaurant in Dubai, then went to Shanghai in China for a period of time. We created the #1 restaurant in Asia. Then went back to Dubai. That was the second step we don't need to talk about. That was a bit of a misstep. Then ended up going to Spain. Spent about 7 years in Madrid. I was working in what's called the El Bulli Group. So El Bulli was the #1 restaurant in the world for about 8 years. I was running one of the innovation labs, the one based out of Madrid, just creating new technologies, new products, new dishes, 32-course tasting menus. Effectively, the most incredible role of just simply using food to tell a story. Then after that, ended up in the big wide world of consumer packaged goods here in the US, and kind of the rest is history.
My goodness. I mean, you just nailed that in like about a 5-minute span. And I think that was brilliant. But it's like, you've captured about 20 years of learnings and being in. Was all of it fine dining? Was that always kind of your area, and the storytelling, like you said, using food to tell a story?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, and I think it was a type of, I hate the label, but it was a type of food that a lot of people call molecular gastronomy. So effectively, it's just the creation of a process, a technique, and then use those techniques. I try not to speak with too much disdain, but not like most of the chefs these days try to show a magic trick to diners, which is not the objective. It's not the look what I can do. It's more let me give you a bit of a snapshot into what's in my my heart and my head. So it was really really all about that. But then I think more to your point, when you got on that like fine dining route, I guess that was where I woke up one day and I was living in Spain, and I woke up and realized I was in the business of expensive food for rich people, which was, from an ego standpoint, it was amazing. It was all about what's mine, what I created, what I did, me. And then I realized that that was wildly unscalable. I was not making impact in the wider world beyond just a momentary, superficial, best meal of my life, best dish of my life, whatever. I mean, those things are awesome for a period of time, but they don't really go after some of those, harder hitting issues. And remember, when I was, I was the kid where I couldn't watch too many of these like deforestation things and documentaries on the TV, because some nights I'd end up, as a little kid, I'd be in tears thinking that the whole world was getting cut down and burnt down. So I've always had this like yearning to try to hopefully try to make impact on really big topics and issues. And I didn't really see the restaurant scene as something that I was able to make scalable impact. So that's how I started to work my way into CPG.
That's amazing. And I do know you have made a tremendous impact with Chew and a lot of the food innovations, child obesity and malnutrition and even severe food allergies and things like that. That's been, when I mentioned, you've had 4,000 different sort of products that you've produced. Is that all on that kind of path?
Yeah, mate. Yeah. So, we don't take projects unless we believe we can make an outsized impact in those categories. So not only like the absence of negatives, right? So it's not only the reduction of, or the removal, of everything artificial. It's the reduction of sugar. it's not only just that, it's about how many, positive nutrients can we add to those products and produce those at a massive scale. But on the side of that, an area that I'm strangely kind of drawn to, and I find it so fascinating, is it within food systems and policy. So we've had the great privilege of being able to advise and have really phenomenal conversations with different governments and world leaders to help advise on what they should be doing to transform their food systems and, obesity, diabetes, all other chronic illnesses, as well as like NGOs and charities and all those sorts of things as well, to see, not only how do we feed people with calories, but how do we then start to reverse things like we've had some blockbuster projects with things like, these issues that I never knew anything about, which is like stunting and wasting amongst children in India. What I'd say one of our greatest impact successes has been really targeting directly the really terrible, horrific situation of stunting and wasting amongst children. So those are the ones, frankly, that I'm somewhere most proud of. Yeah. The other ones are, delicious. They're great experiences and things like that. But the ones where we can really go after these pervasive issues are the ones that that definitely inspire us the most.
I love that. I'll be honest, I kind of brought you on the show thinking we'll be talking a lot about fueling for athletes. And it almost feels, when you think of it like that and then you think about the other end of the spectrum of what you just spoke about, and you almost feel like, maybe I should have rethought how we approach this episode, because it really puts everything in perspective, doesn't it?
But I would say it's almost one and the same. Right? If you think about it, but it's just different scales, right? Different scales and different gravities, right? The gravity of not getting nutrition right if you are starving to death is the impacts of that have far deeper consequences than not fueling an Ironman correctly. At the time, it probably feels the same. But the fact of the matter is, it all boils down to the same thing, Greg. I think if we look at so many other technologies and we think about the progression in so many other industries, the more people that I speak to, we've had the privilege and the real blessing to be able to interact with, world champions and some of the top elite pros across such a multitude of different sports, Olympic gold medalists, etc. And I guess the consistent theme is that, we speak with highly intelligent people. I'll tell you, there's just such a confusion as to how people should be fueling, even in the regular part of their life. The sport part is the acute end of it, but the chronic part of how, what's good for me and what's not. If you look at the cyclical nature of, food and eating, it kind of follows some similar curves to like fashion, right? What's in and what's out. If you look at that and the problems that's fueling across such a wide cross-section of, education, intelligence, background, ethnicity, race, etc., I would argue there's not many people who feel like they're really crushing it on like I'm feeding and fueling myself correctly, again, whether it's in sport or outside of sport. And I think it's become a big problem. And I think that problem is only being exaggerated even more now. I don't want to sound like a cliche, right? But I did this little TED Talk thing a couple of years ago about really our misunderstanding of experts. We seem to have confused, and again, we can get on the rabbit hole of like the YouTuber and the influencer, the micro influencer, the blogger, the this and the that, who have frankly no qualifications to say anything. It only goes to fuel this. I'm always filled with these colorful analogies, but it's this notion of the self-licking ice cream cone, right? You end up in these situations where someone says something frankly audacious, and then all of a sudden, or frankly, it doesn't even need to be audacious, but it could be just, we started calling these things fake news or alternative facts. All of a sudden, someone else repeats it, another person repeats it, and then all of a sudden it gets back to the person who originally said it. Now all of a sudden they're using it as a justification. Look, people are saying. Well, yeah, people are saying because you said it. And they repeated it, and then you heard it back again, right? That's not confirmation that something's fact. And this becomes the problem, right? Because you go onto any of these blogs, and people are touting, frankly, some of the worst pseudoscience you've ever seen. And people are believing it. They're making choices in the rest of their life, and those choices have negative consequences.
Are there any that stand out to you that you want to share? Or you'd rather shy away from it?
No, look, mate, how long you got, right? I think the generalizations are crazy. This is bad for you. This is good for you.
Yeah, right.
The problem is, it's a lot of, poison is typically defined by dosage. Even my son asked me the other day, he said, what's poisonous? And I said, everything. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, in the right doses or the wrong doses, everything can be poison.
Oh, I love that. That's so right. That's brilliant.
I guess, right, because you can get water poisoning, right? You have too much of that, you flush out your system, you're in a major problem. The problem is that we live in this like soundbite era because it's all about clicks and it's all about views and it's all about sensationalism. But the problem is everyone is so hyped up on the headline of a story. The headline is sensationalized to get you to hypothetically read the story, but no one's bothering to read the story because they're consuming so much quote-unquote information. Mm-hmm. And the problem is that everyone's getting the sensational version of whatever someone's trying to say, and they're just simply repeating it. I would tell you generalizations are the most dangerous thing, I think, within our informational community now. The generalizations are missing out on the finer details, which is about dosage, which is about frequency of consumption. It's about, so what I generally tend to tell people, it's about, forget about the micro these days. Think about the macro, right? We've got this really unhealthy relationship with food where we use food to reward or punish ourselves. We don't think about, I hate the word diet, but if you think about diet in terms of what people eat over the course of a day, we don't think of diet in terms of the entirety of the day. We think about it in terms of mouthful. If I have a piece of chocolate, then all of a sudden I'm doing the wrong thing. But people should think about it. Okay, what's one mouthful of chocolate over the course of a day? If you balance your vegetables and your, all of the other things, then it's okay. So generalizations, I guess, is the short way of saying, answering your question.
You've touched on a topic that, the reason our mutual friend Ed Baker and I really started Any Question was we wanted to make sure that it was a place where people could come and know exactly where their information's coming from, know the source they're getting with the credentials behind them, and whether we have a functional medicine doctor or a Western or Eastern medicine or whatever you're into, it's all categorized and you can get your information as you want, but at least you know the person you are getting it from and the credentials that they have, and then you can balance it up yourself going between the different type of health spaces. But it's funny, you've been talking about this, and most recently, I've had a nutritionist talk about high carbohydrate diets for athletes, and I've had other sports physiologists talk about the low carb, high fat diets, and I feel like it's refreshing to hear somebody say, look, anything done in extremes is probably poison. So moderation, it's like we've almost forgotten that word, moderation, in everything.
Yep.
Right? It's like if we can just moderate, nothing is terrible if you don't overdo it. Little bits are okay. It's when we do the extreme of anything, and we're into extremes now. Like you said, it's sound bites, it's quick, it's fast. We want more of. If it feels good, let's have loads of it. And it's like no.
Yeah, but moderation doesn't sell.
No,
right? It doesn't sound like the quick fix, right? Yeah. I shouldn't say it on something like this because it takes my secret and puts it out in the public domain. But I've got this sick fascination with this. Try not to judge me for this one, but I've got this sick fascination for this show on TLC. It's called My 600-Pound Life, and it's my somewhere my television version of junk food. But for me, it's a journey into psychology, right? It's about these people have been told with the size that they are that they've got 1 to 2 years to live, if they don't start making some real quick changes. And when you're staring death in the face like that, you would imagine that they're going to get moved to, frankly, make some pretty radical changes because that's pretty stark. And still the allure of this food that, frankly, makes them feel bad. Physiologically, the food makes them feel bad. But the draw to them, because from a metabolic standpoint and from an overall a drive standpoint, these overabundance of this macronutrition has driven them to the point that they've overruled how do I feel. And now it's just about, satisfying that craving and that urge, even with faced with death. So again, moderation doesn't really sell, and it's all about sensational.
It really is. It's like, I was talking to my mum about this the other day a bit, it's like living and how long we live and why, why do we keep going? Getting a little bit deep here, but and my mum said it great. She said, look, either you have purpose or you don't. And, I lost my dad a while ago, and at the end of the day, he'd raised 3 boys, and that was his mission in life, was to raise 3 boys. Yep. Once we were out of the house, on our way, all married, off we go. His purpose, to some degree, he didn't have a secondary backup purpose. It was like, okay, and he faded fairly fast. And you could say, it was the food that got him, it was this, and it's like, but if we look at the overarching thing, can you find purpose for your life that goes beyond you even? Like, I think to your point earlier, it's like when you were talking about being a fine chef and working with all the world's greatest, and it was me. Well, that won't sustain you. Are you doing something bigger than yourself? Is there something where you're feeling like you living a life of purpose and living for others? And that's when the magic starts happening. It's amazing how things like depression and anxiety go down when you start to try and work for others. And I feel like that's a big thing that we're missing. I'm interested to watch the show, though. The 600-pound, what did you say, 600-pound journey?
My 600-pound life.
My 600-pound life.
Believe me, so I apologize in advance because it's something that just sucks you in, and you've got to see the endings.
I'm glad to hear you're still being able to watch some TV shows in your life and just kick back. I call it dumbing down. My wife Laura and I, we dumb down at the end of the evening for 45 minutes to an hour, and it's just like our dumb down time. And it's like I just need to just switch off from worrying about the kids, worrying about work. It's just like I just want to dumb down for a second.
Junk food for the eyes.
So, mate, tell me, I mentioned in the intro and I saw it on your bio, it says you're a progressive chef, or you're progressive. What does that actually mean for people that don't know? Yeah,
so long before this sensational terms, right? The media created this term called molecular gastronomy.
Yeah.
We used to just call it progressive cuisine, right? There was a label a long time ago called Nouvelle Cuisine, avant-garde, progressive, Cocina Nueva. There's been a lot of labels, and frankly, we used to. It was almost absurd, right? That we used to almost change the name of the entire cuisine on a yearly or every other year basis because all the bad chefs in the world used to catch up to describing their bad food like we used to as well. And therefore, we had to rename the entire cuisine to make sure that people didn't have a bad experience in a bad restaurant and have these preconceived notions about what they were or weren't going to have. So that's, progressive, molecular, avant-garde. That's all kind of the same thing.
No, and a part of this, getting to where you are now in Boston, what have been some of the most amazing highs you've had to this point with both the Chew and fast food, and all your other workings? Is it what stands out to you in your life that you go, wow, that were some critical moments and I'm fortunate to have had them?
I guess it's hard to really identify, Greg. I think, it goes absolutely with saying family has most definitely been one of those. I was, let's say I was nomadic for most of my life. I used to think that was the best life because I lived, the life, I always say living everything within the chapters, living the best you can within each one of those chapters is important. So you don't need to go back and revisit a previous chapter. So, I did that single Aussie chef living around the world in all these different countries. I did that. Let's just say I did that one pretty well. And then, this chapter of my life right now, frankly, how much pride and joy I take as being a father and a husband. COVID has been tragic for a lot of people, a lot of countries, a lot of businesses, etc. And I think business-wise, it was, let's just say, catastrophic. We went from growing so fantastically to literally being within a 4 or 5 week period of time, we were literally dead in the water without any business, but just a ton of fixed costs and 2 facilities and an army of people. And we literally went down to zero.
Wow.
COVID ultimately, although, I feel like I've still got some little PTSD from this whole thing, but ultimately has made us stronger as a business because it's made everything we do much more robust with purpose. And I would say that it's been a net extraordinarily positive for the family, because it really centered, like, it's a cliche, but it really centered me on what was absolutely critically important, which were my children and my wife. Prior to COVID, I used to think, quote unquote, success was being like super busy traveling. I was literally 75% of my life I was on a plane. Some weeks it was like 8 planes a week, back to back. I would squeeze in about 7 trips in 2 weeks, all over the world. And I used to think that was kind of quote unquote successful. Now I'll tell you, since COVID, the bar on travel has gone up exponentially. If the business has got to be fully baked. The opportunities have to be crystal clear in order to get me on a plane now for business, because what I would not sacrifice post COVID now is the connection with my family.
Mate, that is so well said. Just a long quotable quote, and I love that, because you're a man of my own heart. That's I think if COVID taught a lot of us anything, it was that kind of be grateful for what's right in front of you, be present with what you have. It took a lot for, that period of a year or two there. That it was like we couldn't travel, we couldn't do blah, 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 blah. So you're like, okay, well, what do I have right in front of me? And I remember literally walking down the road one day, because we weren't allowed to go anywhere, right? And it was like I was allowed to go outside, and I was walking down the road with my wife, Laura. We had our daughter, Sydney, and my newborn son, Archer, and we were just walking down. Nowhere I could go. And I literally remember looking at the flowers, that whole smell the roses. It was like, I got nothing else to do. So we stood there as a family just with the flowers for 30 minutes. It's something that it was like, there was something grounding about all of that experience that I think a lot of us got something from. And I love that. Well, let's fast forward a little bit. I want to chat to you about fast food and your experiences in the world of Ironman Triathlon, which you found sort of in these last 4 or 5 years. Tell me, how did that sort of shape your philosophy around your vision for fast foods and what you hope to develop there?
Yeah, mate. Look, I'm as you mentioned, I'm new. I'm new to this this sport, or this hobby. For me, at least, this was a COVID baby, right? This was. I think I mentioned to you the other day that everyone had a lot of choices during COVID, but I would say there were 2 real fundamental lifestyle choices. There was the drink more route, and there was the work out a bunch route.
They're your 2 choices.
Yeah, well, I mean, I said to my wife one day, frankly, we gave the drink more route. We gave that a good college try. Yeah, and we realized at a certain point, like, we were drinking a glass or a couple of glasses of red wine almost every night, and frankly, it didn't feel good. Yeah, and so there was this moment. I was like 8 years old. I was watching it was Kona. I was watching on the TV. I asked myself a very, very basic question that a person that age would ask. I said, did I ever think I'd be I think I used the word hard. Did I ever think I'd be hard enough to get one of those things done? Frankly, it was an itch I'd never really scratched. And so over the years, like a walking cliche, I bought the books, dabbled with the idea. I'd been cycling, up until COVID for about 20 years, just for fun, call it like averaging like 200 miles a week-ish, just for fun, never racing, never testing, just, kicking around with mates and groups in different countries, but never really testing myself. And, without going too deep down the rabbit hole, I got this, like most people, this terrible case of imposter syndrome. And, I always think someone's going to catch me doing something that I've got absolutely no place doing. I loved the fact that I started to look at this whole triathlon world, and I said, this world is based on numbers. It's data, it's power, it's speed, it's times, it's finish times, it's all that. And I said, I wonder if I'm actually going to feel content with feeling like the numbers that I get in this particular sport, if I give it my best, if I will actually feel like I deserve those numbers. So whatever, long story short, I went onto Ironman.com. I found the farthest Ironman in the future that I could find, which was Ironman Cozumel, which gave me 11. I think it was about 11 months to train for it. Called my mate, so signed up right then and there. Called a mate of mine who's an ex-pro cyclist in Chicago, Robbie Ventura, and I said to Robbie, I guess I'm going to jump into this thing. I guess I need a coach. Do you know any? He said, "Yep, great, got the guy." I think it was by the couple of days later he was coaching me. By I think it was a couple of weeks later, I think I was already up to, close to 20 hours a week of training. I've got this obviously very obsessive nature in my character. That kind of started the unraveling, right? The unraveling of what I thought I knew about sports nutrition, what I thought the market was all about. I always say to people that, I tried to, surprise, tried to go against the groove. Thought that, I was going to fuel entirely with fat. So I brought some, nut butters on long rides, 100-mile rides. I'll tell you, after nearly choking to death and bonking hard, realized that was probably not the best route. So then started buying the hopes and dreams of the market, bought every, case and caddy of every imaginable gel and gummy and flavor and this and that, and put it in my pantry that my wife always refers to as where all good hopes and dreams go to die. And then started the unraveling, mate. It started I'll tell you, the first insight was when I turned the packet around and I started to read the ingredient label, as obviously a guy in food does. I was pretty shocked. I was pretty shocked at the quantity of artificial ingredients, the types of ingredients used, the seemingly lack of science that was deployed in a lot of these different products and categories. So basically, like everyone does, right, went back to my team of scientists and chefs and said, selfishly, I don't want to fuel with these products myself because I don't want to have to be faced with the choice of pressing pause on my food standards in order to fuel myself, feel bad in the process. So I said, first and foremost, I want these to be the highest performance that we could possibly create. And I always say this is an important distinction because a lot of people say there's some natural products on market. Yes, they're sold as natural, they're sold as healthy, but they're not sold as high performance. So it has to be the highest performance possible. And by the way, it has to be made of all real food. So that was the beginning. Like most of these stories, I always say that, I thought stupidly, I thought this was going to take a year and frankly probably cost about a third of the amount of money that it's cost so far. But I said to the team, it had to be about performance excellence at all costs. And so that was 2.5 years ago. And we created this range of products that basically eliminates this whole spiking and crashing cycle of typically these sugar spikes and crashes. So we've engineered in this type of carbohydrate called galactose that we think is pretty phenomenal at stabilizing blood sugar. So you get a high baseline of blood sugar, you stabilize it, so then you've got this really consistent power, speed, output. You don't finish the races like you're bonking about 10 kilometers before the finish line. You make it all the way to the line. You feel like you could go farther, but you've dug deep into that well. And yeah, I mean we're super excited,
mate. Where were you when I tried my couple of Ironmans I did towards the end of my career? I could have really done without the massive sugar spikes that I had and the insulin lows that all went with it. But well, congrats on all of it. Okay, I got a question for you. The name, fast food. You do realize that people think of fast food as not healthy, not real food. How did that name come about?
So I'm all about brands, right? I love this whole branding process. I call myself a brandophile, right? So I'm all about the name, and the name really is a setup to tell you exactly what you're about to, or the expectations you should have. And so I was, riffing and really sketching out a bunch of things, and I landed on fast because I was looking at what the output of the thing that we want to create, what I wanted, right, which is fast. And I thought about the rest of again, without hopefully being too disparaging, I thought about the rest of the products, mostly, again, I sound arrogant to say this, but they're mostly slow. And I digress just for a second because I think one of the most important points that I came across, or insights that I came across in the creation of this venture, has been when talking to people about what does a successful or an unsuccessful nutrition plan look like in racing and training, particularly in racing. It was mostly categorized as a success via the absence of negatives, right? Mm-hmm. And I say that because people basically think if they haven't either vomited or shit themselves in a race, then somehow it was a really great fueling strategy. I think I said there was something fundamentally wrong with that. So in thinking about food, I wanted there to be food credentials and I wanted there to be performance, right? So performance being identified as fast, and then food being the high bar, being the benchmark, right? So I said, well, fast food. And I said, well, there's this whole entire sector of things that are called fast food, but in fact, that food, like, it's about speed of service. It's actually, if it were defined as the characteristics of how you feel afterwards, it would be called slow food.
Well, it shouldn't be called food for the most part. I think it should be just called fast stuff.
No doubt. Yeah, or slow experiments.
Yeah.
When we push those two words together, we created ultimately a word that doesn't exist in the English language. So then we went through the whole trademarking process, and frankly, we had to, I'll be honest with you, we had to educate the trademark office evaluators to help them understand that it's ironic. It's not about the rest of the industry, because they were worried about people getting confused with our usage of fast food versus the popular term of fast food that's used in the industry. And honestly, we were engaged in a pretty interesting debate. I'm not sure if I'll get that part of my life back, but we eventually landed. So we were granted the trademark, and we're really happy with that. But from an SEO standpoint, it really sucks because it's impossible to find. But we think that the engagement, kind of the double take, the irony is sufficiently valuable to offset the fact that SEO, you've got to work really hard from an SEO standpoint.
It is one of those names that sticks with you. When I mentioned it to Laura, I said, it's fast food. She's like, what? I said, but immediately, like, you never forget it.
Yeah.
You never forget it. And that's something that's very empowering. I totally imagine that the SEO is like, even when I was doing a bit of homework for the show, it's like you type in fast food, it's like, okay, I need to go down a little bit here and let's find it, because you get a lot of rubbish at the top. But mate, I'm so impressed with you. I'm so impressed with the fact that, you've got your company Chew that's going. You decide you want to get into Ironman because you've thought about it for so many years. You give it a good whack, realize that the products out there aren't up to the standard of your standards and that you think it could be better. So you start a whole new company. You grab the amazing people that you already have on your team to start this new company specific to fueling for endurance sports. I think that's phenomenal. I believe, are you also going to be sort of pivoting a little bit with fast food and more into real whole foods for like everyday consumption, or is that something you're also going to look at?
Yeah, mate. Yeah. So we're already, I think you may have had the understanding by now. I'm a little, I like to bite off more than I can chew. So we've, being an innovation company, we've already started, I don't know if I mentioned, but we also sponsor a pro cycling team called the Human Powered Health Team. We're 100% of their nutrition on the bike with our products. But then we also did this offshoot because when sitting with team ownership, we understood that the rest of their nutrition plan was, let's just say it was in need of optimization. So I said to them, great, let me take this on board. Let us do a high performance nutrition plan so we can surround these cyclists with everything they need in the lead up to the race, before the race, after the race, the days before, the days after, etc. So we've been testing that now for the last probably 7 or 8 months. There's also, I think, frankly, some of these pain points of these people improvising at home, these like energy balls and these like rice cakes and things like that. There's a bit of a need for, some excellence in product development in that space as well. So we've deployed some scientists and chefs to seeing, how do we ultimately create almost like a fast food grab and go, which are the real whole foods outside of the gels and the gummies and the hydration mix that we've currently got today, to think about, again, how do we surround athletes with the ability and your weekend warriors, frankly, with the ability to make better choices in every aspect of their life without needing to, again, press pause on their food values, to do the thing they love the most, but then end up feeling a certain way because of that thing, because then you create this, dysfunctional relationship with the thing you love.
Brilliant, mate. Congrats. And you are somebody that I find truly inspiring, and I'm sitting here going, okay, I can do more, I can be more. So I'm enjoying this conversation. I truly am inspired. And I think about you as an entrepreneur and innovator, different in the food and nutrition space, but for people listening, based on your experiences, in building Chew and fast food, do you have any kind of advice for anybody that's maybe, in the entrepreneurial space or startup world or anything? Have you got anything that comes to mind that maybe is advice that you've received or advice that you just be willing to share?
Maybe a couple of things. One of them is you'll often hear hear people say, well, I want to start my own business because I want to be my own boss, or I want to make my own hours. And I would say, don't let that be the motivator, because frankly, no one wants to make these hours. And being your own boss is overrated because what ends up happening is being your own boss, you don't have one boss. You're now beholden and responsible for an entire team, everybody. So rather than having one boss, you've got everybody as a boss. The other one would be, I used to probably look for the drama in most things, right? I used to, being a chef, a little hot-headed, used to feed off the drama. And, I think one of the things that I'm starting to land on now would be, this notion of someone said something to me a long time ago, it'll all be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. For me, that was a real kind of sobering point, because it's about, and again, if you look at it in terms of even the market, right? The only certainty in a really, really, really hot market is that the market's going to cool off at a certain point. And when the market is really low, that the good times are going to return. And it's about trying to, make sure that you can navigate those times and stay as level-headed as possible. Because if you don't, then you'll lose yourself, you'll lose your mind, and then ultimately you'll lose everything. So really trying to stay level-headed, reconnect with, what actually matters, focus on the things that matter, focus on the controllables, and then the uncontrollables, you can't control them anyway.
Well said, and I truly appreciate that, and great advice. A quick break to remind you to go check out Any Question. You can go to anyquestion.com/Greg Bennett or download Any Question, one word, on iOS or Android. It's completely free. You can go on there and listen to 75,000 plus answers from about 1,000 of the world's greatest experts. They're there to answer your questions from anything from sports and military, first responders and pets and healthcare and everything else in between. So go check it out on Any Question. Also, Adam has also given us a discount for fast food. He's given a 25% discount. So if you go use the code One Moment Longer and you go to ilovefastfood.com/discount/1 moment longer. That's like ilovefastfood.com/discount/1 moment longer. All right, mate. What would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Yeah, I would. That's a good one. I kind of touched on this imposter syndrome thing before. I would say the lesson that's come from this imposter syndrome thing was when I was younger, pre-18 and around about that 18 mark. I used to sometimes be paralyzed with the fear of someone catching me, and I think in the later stage of my development, I learned to convert that to fuel. And I would say if I could convert that to fuel earlier in my life, I could have avoided, a lot of the stress, a lot of the drama, a lot of the anxiety, convert that thing to fuel. So I would say that I would love to have known that when I was younger.
Oh, well said. That whole imposter syndrome and all the insecurities you have as teenagers and you're trying to find yourself, it's a difficult period of your life. I love when you said earlier in the episode, you were 19, 20 when you went to London and, you had to kind of present yourself beyond maybe what your qualifications were. And I think you must have grown tremendously in that short period of time. It's very cool. I want to jump into the second one I have here, and it's 3 people you would want to have dinner with, non-family, living or dead.
I love the responses of some of your of all the people you've had on. So this is one I had to think about, and I was anticipating this one. So I would say there's going to be a bit of a theme here, but there was this guy a very long time ago, a chef named Fernand Point, and Fernand Point I would say was, really one of the major catalysts of rethinking what we define these days as, like, as you mentioned before, fine dining. He's a chef, a very fabled chef who, depending on who you talk to and who the story's coming from, would drink somewhere between 1 to 7 bottles of champagne per night. Really was a philosopher, an anthropologist, and a chef. So I'd say Fernand Point has a seat there. I would have to say David Goggins needs a seat at this table. It's the book that I listened to the audio book. David Goggins speaks to my soul. It speaks to the way that I see life, the vigor in which to attack life, and the fact that it's, you're responsible for everything that happens. And I'd say lastly, another probably potential cliche here, but Steve Jobs. I'd say that Steve was just an absolute innovator of not only product but of industry, and not only of industry but an innovator of mindset. There's tons of questions that I'd love to ask Steve.
What a great dinner. Now I have to ask, being that you're a chef, who's going to cook and what are you going to eat at this dinner?
I will tell you who's not going to cook. It's not going to be me. Because the problem is when you get invited to someone's house, you end up cooking. So this time I would take my seat.
Yeah.
Frankly, for a meal like this, it couldn't be too discovery. It couldn't be too engaging on the food, because then it takes away somewhere from the engaging of the conversation. So it would have to be provocative food, but not overly complicated and intrinsic. So I would not cook unless you wanted to come and cook an Aussie barbecue somewhere.
Mate, that'd be pretty dull. The expectations would be really low at that point. But okay, on that one, I do have a question for you. What's the best meal you have ever had or experienced? Is there one that stands out?
Good question, mate. I'm gonna maybe sound like a bit of a canned cliche here, but I would say it's all about set and setting, right? We reference that set and setting in other microdosing worlds, but I think within the food world, set and setting plays such a key part. Like, I can tell you, depends on how you feel, depends on who you're with, it depends on a whole bunch of things. Yeah. But I can tell you the fondness of my memories of Australia, for example, living in Brisbane for a period of time. I'd jump in a car sometimes if I got overly confused or complicated things in my mind. I'd jump in a car and I'd head north and I'd go to like Mooloolaba, for example. There's a place up there that would it was macadamia nut crusted perch. That's how we're talking like over 20 years ago. And sit on the rocks and sit on the beach, eat that with the smell of the sea. And in that particular moment, I can tell you that was the best meal and the best restaurant in the world, because everything was hitting. You can literally go to the best restaurant in the world and you can have you can not have the best meal of your life. So again, it all depends on set and setting and kind of who you're with and how you're feeling.
No, it's true, isn't it? It's all the emotions tied together. And I think that's more than a fair answer. But it is always fun to ask a world-renowned chef what their meal is. And I do, I spent a lot of time, 15 years living in Noosa and, Mooloolaba, Maroochydore area. And so I know that area well. And the idea of just sitting by the beach and having fish and chips, although your fish sounds a little bit better than the typical fish and chips, it does bring back really great memories.
There's also something to be said about, the old fashioned, they don't do it these days because of toxicity, but, when the $2 worth of chips, for example, wrapped in newspaper. Ripping the end of that newspaper off. And I think, frankly, I think the newspaper gave it a little bit of a newspaper taint, which was pretty awesome.
A little bit of the ink taste.
Exactly. But there's something to be said about that as well. I can tell you some of those, like $2 worth of chips were some of the best meals of my life.
Yeah. Potato scallops. Remember that?
Oh, dude, potato scallops were the king. And if you took white bread with butter and you put it in the middle with a bit of tomato sauce,
thing, the crunch, we used to do that in school, didn't we? Oh, my God.
Oh, man, that thing. And again, that was probably the best meal in the world at the time, right?
10 cents for the potato scallops, throw it in between two pieces of white bread. Oh, my God. Okay, that's hilarious. All right, mate. Okay, next one. Where do you see yourself in, let's look at the next 3 to 5 years, with these companies, with the kids, with your athletic, endeavors?
Yeah, mate, look, I would hope that it's kind of an evolved version of what we're already doing, right? I think I I love the fact that, I feel kind of agency over my life, that, I'm doing exactly what I feel like, I'm trying to achieve. So I'd say that, I'm not one of these like wanderlust guys who say, I want to be doing something altogether different or sitting on a beach doing nothing. I'm the guy when I go to a beach and we sit down with my wife. I say to my wife, right, what are we doing? And she says, we're doing it. And I said, what are we doing? She said, just sitting here doing nothing. So I'm not that guy. So I'd say that, hopefully maybe it's an evolved version of what we're currently doing, but not dissimilar to what we're currently doing.
Yeah, I got to say, mate, after just chatting with you this past hour, obviously no one's life is perfect and no one's life, but you at least get the basic principles of what life is about. And like you said earlier, you're being present with family, you're being present when you're at work, you're being present with your athletic career. That's the best you can hope for and the best you can do, right? It's almost like if happiness can come in there from time to time, that's a bonus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or you gotta make your own happiness everywhere you go, right? Rather than waiting for it.
Exactly. You want to finish with some rapid fire questions with me, mate? You up for it?
Hit me.
All right. These are quick, although they rarely are. All right, here we go. One book you would recommend?
I love Dave Sinclair's Lifespan.
Great one. Okay, 2 most used apps on your phone?
Oh, no doubt. Spotify for the amount of training that I'm doing, and Audible because with this imposter syndrome, it drives me to consume at least 4 books a month.
Yeah, perfect. We're going to have to swap our libraries on Audible, mate. I'm the same.
Absolutely.
Just digest, and 2 to 2.5 times the speed when I'm working out. I love it.
Yeah, I'm at 2.25. That's about as high as I get before
Depends
people
on the
start saying
narrator.
like chipmunks.
Depends on the narrator. I've figured it out. It's just who narrates the book.
Yeah, very true.
And how complex it is. All right, first job you ever had?
First job, I had a company when I was 8 years old called Adam's Odd Jobs. Started by washing cars. Then by 9 years old, I was employing my school friends because we had too much business, and then migrated that into lawn mowing, window washing of houses, landscaping, etc. So my own business called Adam's Odd Jobs.
Always an entrepreneur. I love it.
Always a hustler.
A hustler
Just
at
a
8.
hustler.
I love it. Oh, your parents did great. All right. Out of 10, how cool are you?
Oh, mate, I don't know. It depends on the day of the week. I would say my coolness score takes a big hit because I'm typically in bed by like 9 p.m. So based off that very uncool factor and the fact that I stopped drinking with triathlon, I'd say, let's take it somewhere in the middle of like a 6 or a 7.
Mate, if you're a 6 and a 7, the rest of us plummet. I got to tell you, I think going to bed and not having to have a drink, I think you're actually one of the ones leading the way. This is the new frontier. Going to bed early, getting up early, ice bathing, training, all of this, mate. This is that your coolness factor's gone up because of that. So and there's a coolness factor to prioritizing family and your kids. Like, you don't understand. This is the modern man. So
this is maybe adult cool, not kid cool.
Maybe I should be specific. All right. Who would you want to play a movie of your life?
Oh, mate. Find me someone deranged enough that obsesses about weird details. Maybe no idea, mate.
I think Hugh Jackman. I think Hugh Jackman would be good for you.
Hugh Jackman, there we go. Are we talking like Hugh Jackman in like the Wolverine where he gets like super jacked? I'd take that.
Nah, Hugh Jackman, The Greatest Showman.
There we go. Yeah, okay, I'll take that too. Hey,
that's still a win. It's still a win. All right, which decade of music is best?
Mate, I'm a keep myself young by listening to new music. So I'm still very much a new music guy. But I also love early 2000s, hip hop. I reminisce about the 80s and the 90s because those are the eras I grew up as a kid. So, mate, I listen to everything.
Yeah, perfect. And last one, what's the greatest movie of all time?
Oof, it depends. I will give you 2. I will tell you Top Gun or Gladiator if I want to pump up. And if I want to somehow, if I'm feeling miserable and want to kind of just be by myself, I love The Pursuit of Happiness because I think that there's just such a feel-good story in there in amongst all that sadness.
Yeah, I love it, buddy. Well, Adam, what's next for you, mate? You've got plenty on. What, upcoming projects? Anything? You have gone through a lot already, but what's in the next, few months?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, I mean, we sporting wise, and this is all new to me, but I've got Ironman Texas next week.
Yes, best of luck.
So I've got. Last year I did five full distance Ironmans. I did 2 halves and 3 Olympics. This year I've cut it all the way back. I'm just doing four Ironmans. It's that keeps me. I always say, the stuff I do in this sport, I believe very strongly makes me better. I hope makes me a better father and a better in the companies. Yeah. Company wise, we're just deep in the throes of that is super exciting. Certain days heartbreaking process of launching companies. So we're deep in the throes of fast food, and it just feels like such an extension of my soul and something that we feel very strongly is making impact. So I'm really excited about that too. And on the Chew front, just continuing to try to blaze new trails and impact people's lives.
Mate, you really are an inspiration. Your journey is really one of those that, like what this show is about, it's really about sharing journeys of people that just hang in there one moment longer, and you really have that endurance mentality. So thanks for coming on the show, mate, and just sharing all those stories and all your knowledge and wisdom, mate. Really appreciate it.
Likewise, mate. I'm super grateful for the time, and again, chatting with someone with your kind of a background has definitely been a thrill.
Oh, mate, enjoyed it. And for everybody listening, you can find all the show notes and timestamps at bennettendurance.com/media.
Thanks a lot for listening. If you enjoyed the show, your support would truly be appreciated. You can visit the Patreon page, or you can subscribe with your podcast app of choice. Don't miss the next episode, so subscribe and be notified. For show notes, if you want to know more, please visit bennettendurance.com. I'm Phil Liggett, and on behalf of Greg Bennett, here's to the next time, and I hope you will join Greg again very soon.